keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's Ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio. Once again with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.TV. Thank you guys for tuning in, and make sure you check out our website, theantimedia.org. And we're joined this week back with our co-host DB Schwartz. How you doing tonight, man?
Doing good, Nick. Just coming back from the Great White North, and got to take a look up there, scouted around, and saw a part of the country I didn't really know too much about, and it was pretty cool.
Cool. You got some like family and stuff up that way, or? Yeah,
I went to see my 97-year-old grandmother in Cleveland, and then hopped over to the Twin Cities and checked it out. And good things are happening up there. There's a lot of new ideas that are kind of being accepted in a really conventional kind of traditional community. They're going to probably pass this medical marijuana bill up there. It's going to start in pill form, but eventually it'll go everywhere, and that's saying a lot in that state.
Yeah, because it's typically, a pretty conservative area, traditional area, but it kind of just goes to show what happens when people realize, when they start seeing through the propaganda. Because even now, what was it, like 6 or 8 months ago, there was a cop out there making an argument against marijuana, and he cited one of those stories from the Daily Current or something, from one of those satire sites, and he was like, right. Yeah, 34 people died the first day that it was legalized in Colorado. We can't allow that into our community. But he didn't realize it was a satire article that he was referencing, which is pretty funny. But I think I see it as more like a shift, an overall shift in marijuana, gay marriage. That's where it starts, but we're moving in the right direction as far as I could tell.
Oh yeah, I mean, if it's coming to the heartland, it's eventually gonna spread even down south. It starts on the coast and then it spreads inward, and it's taken a long time, but things are changing down there too. And the new generation, if they weren't so distracted, they'd probably be one of the most prolific generations ever. And I guess that's part of the whole plot and the plan, is to keep everyone so distracted. While we're speaking, I'm sure countless millions are watching the World Series, and I can't bring myself to care.
Yeah, a lot of people are probably watching. A lot of people aren't, though. The World Series apparently isn't getting very good ratings. The worst ratings, it's some of the worst ratings they've ever had. And it's probably a combination between the fact that people are losing interest in baseball, for one, at least on TV. I like baseball. I like playing baseball, but I don't really enjoy watching it on TV. I like going to the games and stuff. It's kind of fun.
Well, I mean, how much more obvious could it be that it's rigged when you realize that there's a market that's 30 times the value of all of the action, both in TV deals and everything they do and saw on the field and all the jerseys, just from the gambling. The gambling's 30 times bigger than all of the legitimate things associated with the so-called sport So you now know it's just the WWE, and everybody's still buying into it.
Well, yeah, I think pretty much every professional sport in one way or another is rigged. I don't think the players, like, I don't think it's as bad as the professional wrestling where the guys are all faking it and stuff. I think the players are actually playing to win, but I think they do rig it with the refs. And now the NBA refs got caught, right. A year ago, 2 years ago?
Tim Donahue got caught years ago, and he even served a jail sentence for it. And it's something that people got to realize. It's just like when MSNBC, they're using a green screen literally the entire time. I mean, you cannot look at these things anymore the same way you have in the past, for better or worse. I mean, yeah, we all want to live in that illusion and keep buying into that kind of reality, but we're realizing it's there to placate us. It's there to stop us from changing things. It's there to stop the people that are supposed to be governing us from spreading misery and ultimately poverty around the world, just to continue our lifestyle that we could do without needing to resort to oil right now. I mean, it's just that simple.
Yeah, man. And, the other thing is that less and less people are watching TV. So that's another good thing about the ratings being down on the World Series. I haven't hardly seen any posts about it on social media either. Maybe it's just because it's not the New York Yankees or whatever. It's not one of the real big popular teams. So I don't know. I haven't been keeping up on that stuff. I know it's Game 7 and all that stuff, but we do have some big news to talk about tonight. Some breaking stuff, and then some stuff that we just need to mention here. Now make sure you guys check us out Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Check out Levon's show. Friday night's a little different show. Me and DB aren't on it, but it's Levon, which is our other awesome host, and she has a little more kind of a softer side of the anti-media, less politics and stuff like that, more solution-based stuff. Not that we don't like to get into solutions and stuff here. And if anybody wants to call in, feel free to call us to chime in on whatever it is that we're talking about, or if you want to bring up something that we're not talking about. We're not going to censor anybody unless you're going completely off the hinge. I know we've had some pretty wild callers in the past, and it's really entertaining, man. And I don't want people to think that when people call in, we're not endorsing what people are saying, the ideas they're putting out there, but at the same time, we don't want to censor them. And, I like to hear different ideas, different theories about stuff.
Well, half the time, these people bring information I don't know about, and there's just too much to possibly cover for somebody to have the wherewithal to know everything. I mean, big so-called alternative news sites even have research teams that come up with their stories. So please, by all means, call in. I know we had a Marine call in, and that was fascinating. Just listening to that guy.
I was actually going to mention that. Yeah, the Marine that was an electrician, that he said that they were being trained years ago for martial law situations, for civil control situations and stuff like that, and that was pretty eye-opening. So if anybody wants to join the conversation, feel free, and it's always fun to get a roundtable going too.
Right.
The call-in number is 718-717-8296. You can call whenever when we're mentioning something. Keep in mind that the show that you're hearing is about 45 seconds behind what we're actually talking about. So we may be like 45 seconds ahead of when you call in. So just keep that in mind. And then check out Ponder and XL, the guys that hooked us up with our awesome intro and outro music. Ponder's coming out with a new album he's supposed to be done in a few weeks. So we're going to have him back on the show, talk a little bit of politics with him, some philosophy maybe, because he's definitely into this independent media stuff and anti-establishment stuff that we always talk about. So the first story I want to jump into is from Ferguson, which is an anonymous Twitter feed, and they've been retweeting a lot of our stories about Ferguson and stuff like that. But anyway, these guys have leaked some information citing two different sources, at least one of them within the government with access to this information. But basically what they've said is that the verdict is basically in, and the cop, Darren Wilson, that shot Mike Brown is not going to be tried. He's not going to be charged. And now, if you look back, I know we've mentioned this a few times, but this happened about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. There was a journalist from the Daily Kos, which is a progressive news outlet that has been following the Ferguson situation very closely, and he got word of a leak as well. Someone told him some information that the National Guard and that the St. Louis Police were all gearing up for what they're thinking is going to be a massive civil disobedience and perhaps rioting and all that stuff when this verdict does come in, because obviously they've known. I mean, it's like they've known since before this grand jury even started, that this guy was going to be let off. In fact, I mean, letting this guy off may be part of what these guys are trying to do to provoke something big and something violent to happen.
It's too obvious that that's what it is, Nick, because they're not even taking into account the private autopsy that the family ordered that pretty much showed, the way that he was killed was on his head, dude. That's an execution. I mean, is a person still a threat to you on their knees? And even if he was getting up, don't you just shoot him in the leg? Don't you just shoot him anywhere else? I mean, is there no way to incapacitate him without 2 gunshots to the head? I mean, that's making sure, right? So it's way beyond the normal scope. Even if the guy overpowered him, tried to grab his gun, and then ran away, and he said, hey, stop where you're at, get on your hands and knees or whatever, get on your knees, and then, walked around him and shot the guy in the head, I don't know. But the physics of the murder scene don't add up. And the fact that they're not even really taking into account that second autopsy, and now a third one's going to be conducted by the Fed. I suppose they're doing that maybe for a civil lawsuit, but it's just not going to do enough. You can't pay people enough money for them to be in constant fear of their lives and it be okay.
Yeah, man, there's definitely something that's not right here. I don't know what it is, but here's another bit of this story that I want to mention. Now, like I mentioned before, they're gearing up. We have a story on the antimedia.org. It's probably about 4 links down on the front page. Since the shooting of Mike Brown, St. Louis police have spent $170,000 stocking up on more riot gear, including batons, shields, pepper balls, which are basically 10 times stronger than pepper spray that you can fire out of a paintball gun. And all kinds of other horrible gear that they're going to use against these people when the verdict does come out. Now, I don't know how correct or how accurate these anonymous leaks are. I'm guessing, I by all looks of it, I say 95% chance is, Darren Wilson's going to get let off. And then I give a 75% chance that there's going to be bigger riots than what we saw at the beginning. Kind of like a repeat of what happened with the Rodney King riots and all that stuff, which isn't going to be pretty. It's going to be divisive and stuff like that. And it's just something that we have to keep in mind and be prepared for when it comes, when it hits. And keep in mind that when it all comes down to it, there is a chance that these guys are purposely provoking these riots. And now there were reports when the Ferguson riots were first going off that a lot of the people that were starting the riots, people that were throwing bottles at the cops, they weren't local people, and no one really knows who they were. They could have been agent provocateurs, and by all means, they probably were. These people weren't out there trying to just break down stores and stuff. They're out there trying to get justice for this horrible police situation that goes on in a lot of these places in the Midwest and in the South. Because the cops are horrible. I mean, it even goes on in most big cities, L.A., San Diego. I mean, everywhere. We have a problem with police. And I went to that big protest down here in City Heights in San Diego a couple weeks ago. And, man, I mean, just everybody's out there. Every color, every creed, every whatever age of people are like, something is completely wrong. And then we got this NYPD whistleblower. I forget his name now, but this older guy that blew the whistle on the NYPD years ago. Now, he came out, and he was trending today on Facebook because he came out and he said, you know what? The cops are still out of control. I blew the whistle years ago and said the cops are out of control, and nothing's really changed. The cops are still out of control.
Yep. That's Frank Serpico, and he exposed how deep the corruption went in the NYPD way back in the 70s. And I'm talking about cops that were doing the unspeakable types of things you could imagine and using the undercover as justification for it. And I'm really talking about, I'm sure you saw today, Nick, that there was a report about a police officer who raped a child while his other police officers watched. These types of things have been happening forever because these positions of power attract the worst type of people, and we have no way to stop these psychopaths from getting in. And in a lot of ways, they're useful to those in charge, and that's got to stop. It's got to be a whole philosophical change in the way we allow ourselves to be policed. We can't allow ourselves to be policed by wolves that look at you as sheep because that's how they'll treat you.
Exactly, man. There's got to be a fundamental shift, and yeah, there's been some horrible atrocities lately. There was a video, man, and it was really hard to watch for me. But a cop literally sexually assaulted a woman in a courtroom. He took her onto the side room, said, "Hey, I got to search you." Took her in this room, sexually assaulted her. The woman came out, and then she tried to tell the judge, and the judge just sat there and looked at her like she was stupid. And then the cop is like, "Hey, either you go and like take back what you just said, or you're getting arrested and we're taking your kid." He literally said that. And the woman sitting there crying, and she's like, "Okay, I'll take it back." She went to the microphone and she's like, "No, I'm not taking it back. He did this to me." And I mean, she ended up getting charged with some kind of BS crime. And luckily, she was able to fight it, and then she took a lawsuit to the guy, and then it was settled. And then there was another one where a cop literally handcuffed a woman in his office. This was like the police chief or the sergeant or something, and sexually assaulted a woman in his office handcuffed. I mean, these guys are not operating on the same moral level that the rest of us are. I mean, they're operating on the level of rapists. And
the good ones, because there's maybe 20% of them, can't do anything. They're outnumbered. They really are. And they'll use them for the PR department, and they'll use them as the shining knight example. And yeah, there's heroes in the department, but they're outnumbered 4 to 5 for sure. And how do we clean up the department? How are we going to empower guys to first get rid of police chiefs who are kind of enabling these really bad guys? That's got to be the first step. Second step is everything they do has got to be on a camera. It just has to be. And if it's not, it's just inadmissible. Your word is not good enough because we don't need it to be good enough anymore. Technology takes care of you needing to be actually an honest person. We don't need to trust you anymore. You can go about doing your job. Just know you're going to be held personally liable, and everything's on video.
Yeah, man, exactly. I mean, that's at least one way that we could start to get some kind of accountability, because their word cannot be trusted. And when it comes down to your word versus them, well, the judge normally sides with the cop, and that's completely not right. I mean, this is not how the justice system is supposed to be running.
We don't need it anymore. We really don't. Not with all the CCTVs around. There is no word. There's only video. No more word, because how is your word any better? What vetting process have you gone through that we as a society can trust? There's no more trust there with any department. So we got to reel you in with your own tech. Otherwise, it's pandemonium, and anarchy will come out, because people are going to start seeing those who's supposed to serve us and keep law and order as the enemy. And then the criminal becomes actually the enemy of my enemy, and we start to accept the criminal element. And that's when society starts to break down.
Now, we have the scary situation here, and we talked about it last show, and I encourage everyone that's listening to go back and listen to Monday's show, because I think it was a pretty damn good show. There's this guy named Sibo the rapper, and he's a LA-based rapper, and he's been doing a lot of songs about, against police brutality. His cousin was killed, gunned down by the LAPD, unarmed black kid. And he started making these songs about the LAPD. I think he made at least 4 or 5 songs. They all went pretty viral, got pretty big. I mean, this guy was a rising star. A few of our journalists are pretty close with him in LA, and he's also an activist and stuff. And by all means, by all looks of things, he was basically framed for a crime, for breaking into a house and stealing some stuff. And the witnesses, the evidence are very weak. They basically... the woman basically saw a black guy running away, and that's all she saw. And they took him. They handcuffed this guy, brought him in, and she basically said, "Yeah, that's him." But there's no way she could have actually really identified him, other than, I mean, she didn't even see his face. She just saw a guy running away. Anyway, this guy has been convicted now, and he's facing at least 4 years in prison. And this is kind of what we've been talking about when it comes down to the NSA, when it comes down to this Hooverism, this Hoover type of idea about how they're going to use all this. Whenever someone becomes a political dissident, whenever someone steps out of bounds, whenever someone goes against the talking point, they're able to blackmail you or frame you or whatever it is they're trying to do. And now on Monday we talked about how Putin actually came out. Vladimir Putin came out and said, "Hey, this is why the NSA is so dangerous. They're going to start using all this NSA data to start blackmailing world leaders." And let's not be foolish. That's already what they're doing. I mean, the NSA is just an evolution, an improvement on what Hoover was working with back in the FBI a long time ago, and they just got better and better at it. This is what these guys are doing with this data, and this is why we have to be so careful. Because if they're able to use it against, the Prime Minister of Germany, if they're able to use it against the Queen of England or whoever you want to say, just think about how much they could use it against you. Because these people, these politicians, they at least have some kind of security. They have some kind of encryption. 99% of the average citizen don't really protect their data. They don't know how to use encryption. They don't know how to wipe their tracks clean. All of this NSA crap can be used against you if you ever become influential, if you ever step out of line, if you ever do something that is actually harming the establishment. You will be framed. They will pull up all of your selfies. They will pull up all of your conversations, anything illegal that you've ever done, and they're going to pin you, blackmail you, force you to change your tone, either that or they're going to throw you in prison just like they threw Sibo the rapper in prison.
Absolutely. I mean, they tried to do it already down there in Brazil, and thankfully it didn't work just for this election cycle, but next time I'm sure they'll get a pure fascist in there, and they'll be able to do it through blackmail. And they've crushed Argentina's economy, so now there's not a lot they can do, even though they weren't really able to blackmail them and get into their network too easily. And it's going to just crush us economically, because no one's going to want to use any American platforms anymore. And you're right, nobody knows about encryption, nobody knows how to even use a VPN or even have, anti-malware, and their stuff's just crawling with things. And it's all spyware. And where do you think it all ends up? Why did the CIA just sign a $600 million contract with Amazon's cloud service? It's too obvious. And you just can't use these huge monolithical corporations to do anything anymore because it's all going to the same place, the Umbrella Corp, right? It's just all going there.
If you're in a state that will throw you in jail in a cage for smoking a joint, like let's say Texas, I know we have a lot of listeners in Texas. We have a lot of listeners in the South, where marijuana is basically a felony in a lot of places. Do yourself a favor and do not text or Facebook message your dealer for whatever reason, or whenever you're going to do anything that is maybe not immoral, but at least can wind you up in prison. Get your friends and whoever that you're going to be communicating with to use encrypted chats, to use VPNs, to use proxies, and stuff like that. It only takes a few minutes of online research to get yourself at least a little bit anonymous, because you don't want to be an activist and you hold an anti-war rally that's actually successful, or you're lobbying for some kind of grassroots movement or whatever, and for them to just pull up this data and say, oh, this guy's smoking weed or doing cocaine, let's throw him in prison. You don't want that to happen. Even though I don't think any of those things are immoral, because we live in a police state, because we live in a surveillance state, because we live in a national security state, we got to take those precautions, man. And a lot of these companies are out there that provide encrypted services. Their business model is based on undermining the machine. The reason they created that company is to subvert surveillance and stuff like that. These are the companies we need to support. You want to go on Facebook and send chats to your guy that supplies you with your weed? That's a bad idea. Even if you're in California, even if you're in a place that it's decriminalized and stuff, they can still judge that up later on and use it against you, undermine your credibility, use it to defame you, use it to assassinate your character, whatever.
Right. I suppose the only kind of backlash we can expect, besides there just being rampant blackmailing, is that people have a loss of shame. And I think we've talked about this before, Nick, that if things were to come out, if people try to post your dirty laundry about things on the internet, or you put yourself in precarious positions, that we're going to move forward as a society where that's not going to be the sole thing you're judged on. You're going to be looked at for the entire body of your life and character, because we know that everyone now is susceptible to these moments of weakness and it being absolutely recorded for all time. And that shouldn't be the thing that people are judged on solely. Then it becomes pre-crime, and that's where we see already kind of heading that way. And if it gets to that point, then we're all breaking the law all the time when we're really all in prison right now and we just don't know it. And they'll just bring the hammer down whenever they want, and then what?
Yeah, man. And so if Putin's worried about it, we definitely should be worried about it, and it can be used against any of us. I mean, I'll probably be victimized by it sooner or later. We all will. Anybody that steps out of line, anybody that talks about stuff, anybody that has a blog, eventually they're going to drudge shit up on you, and that's just going to be a fact of life. That's why you got to, you know what? If you're going to do something, lay it all out there, man. And just like you were saying, the loss of shame. If you like a certain kind of porn, whatever. Don't be ashamed of it.
But who judges? This is where it's going to backlash. This is where it's going to actually backfire on them. Nobody judges anymore. We really don't. I mean, we may think less or more of somebody based on what they do, but nobody's perfect. We all know it, and all dirty air is dirty air all the time, to the point now where somebody's got to be a real, POS to elicit a response from people like, that guy sucks. Otherwise, we're like, man, we've all been there, all done that. That's our generation. That's the one underneath us. Is that a good and a bad thing? Sure. I mean, maybe the ethics and moral standards drop a bit, but it's still better than the alternative.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I know. Now, before we move on from this police state stuff, and we haven't really had a police state episode in a while here, but we really do need to talk about it every night, because I mean, shit, we posted like 6 articles today on police violence and things police are doing. I'm just going to go over a couple things before I get into this big one here. The police brought out helicopters, canines, and other military tactics to find an 18-year-old kid that stole a pack of cigarettes in Florida. Okay, so that's just something that's wild and crazy. But the one I did want to really talk about is what's been dubbed Frangate, which is about this guy, Eric Frein. I'm sure you've heard of him. It's been kind of blacked out in the media lately, but this is the guy that shot and killed a cop in Pennsylvania, and then he shot and injured another cop, and he's been on the run ever since. Now, it's been like a month now that they haven't been able to find him, but here's the thing. And here's the thing not many people are talking about. They've got 1,000 police agents out there looking for this guy. Okay, it's costs just the salaries to pay these 1,000 guys, $1.4 million a week. And now keep in mind this has been going on for about 6 weeks. And now that's not even the worst of it. The worst of it is that the community where this guy's hiding out is now basically under martial law. People can't get out of their houses. We have a journalist friend of ours named Joseph Lemieux. He runs a YouTube channel. I can't remember the name of it now, but we'll try to get him on the next show. Actually, that's a good guy to have on. But he got an interview with a guy that lives in the area, and he was delivering some appliances to somebody, one of his customers or whatever. He pulled over to tie down his load in his truck, and the cops come up to him, take him to the ground at gunpoint, bruised his ribs, all because he stopped his truck. He stopped his car on the side of the road to tie it down, and he doesn't look like the guy. Now, there's another guy that looks kind of similar to this Eric Frein guy. He's been stopped by police roughly 40 times. He's been hospitalized because they've roughed him up. I mean, we're talking about absolute martial law going on in this community, and it's being completely ignored, not only by the corporate media, but the independent media isn't really talking about it much either. But this is something that's pretty, this is pretty telling. This is kind of what happened during the Dorner situation, the Chris Dorner situation. And like you talked about earlier, DB, about how there are like at least 20% of cops that are actually good cops. But we say, well, what happens to those good cops? Well, that's what happened to Dorner.
They need to be empowered. It's going to take something insane right now to think of, like a computer actually choosing police by some kind of way they can find out their ethical standard. No more of these human interviews. We can't trust them anymore. It's going to be something stupid like that. We're going to have some stupid AI program built to interview cops that they know are good and start hiring only those dudes, and eventually all those guys are going to be overwhelming to the other bad dudes, and they're going to be empowered, and they're going to boot them out. What else can we do? Maybe make a college degree the standard. At least then they have to be somewhat intelligent to have made it through for a degree. I don't know what we can do. We got to come up with some way to get standards high and get these guys outnumbered by the good guys. Because right now these guys, they can't do it. If something happened, what's to say they don't get disappeared? with the culture going on, with politics being as deadly as it is, quite literally, that these guys that are good, just they don't have the ability to do anything. And I suppose maybe it'll take us to get out there, and then they see the solidarity and come together with us like they did in Germany, where the cops basically turned. And now what's going on in Germany? Well, look, they're changing their entire paradigm around. So maybe that's what it's going to have to take.
Yeah, one last story here I want to talk about. It's kind of, you were kind of in the area, I guess not, but Minnesota, it's more in the north, I guess. But there's a mother out there that her son was in a horrible accident, and he got some kind of mental damage. And he has a lot of problems now because of this accident. Anyway, she tried a bunch of medicines. He was on a bunch of these pharmaceutical medicines, which unfortunately made him suicidal and made problems worse. She tried a bunch of different things. Eventually, she finally said, "You know what? I'm gonna try medical marijuana." She went over to Colorado, got him some medicine, took him with her, and he started doing a treatment with medical marijuana. And guess what? It started working. And then his teachers, the boy's teachers, asked her. He's like, "Wow, your son's doing so much better in school. What are you doing to help him out?" And unfortunately, she thought she'd be able to trust the teacher, and she said, "Yeah, I got him on medical marijuana." Now, unfortunately, in this police state that we live in this snitch culture, this whole see something, say something, I mean, all this programming, all this propaganda, guess what happened? The teachers went and they snitched on the mom. And now guess what? The mother is facing, most likely, she's going to go to prison. I mean, this is not a joke. She could face up to 4 years in prison, if not more, in Minnesota, where they don't have any kind of legalization. And this is just an example of...
And that's infuriating the people up here. I'll tell you why. That's a family place, dude. Everywhere you go, you see families. And when your child's sick, and the medical community, because of what they said is bogus medical research done in the 30s in the Reefer Madness PR campaign, that was a scheme so they could get a way to patent this plant. And now they've demonized it so much that they can't sell their own patent. So they want to victimize everybody else and have all these kids suffer from these diseases that could be alleviated and even cured. People aren't going to go for it. They're just not. They're really mad about it, because what if their kid gets sick? And what, are they going to move to Colorado? And believe it or not, that's actually happening. People are doing that because of their children are sick, because of whatever's going on in our environment. So there's going to be these backlashes, because you start screwing around with people's families and their children, and you really, put their health at risk because of societal norms that no longer are even prevalent. If you're under 70, you're probably fine with pot. I mean, you were at least around during the 60s, so you know what's up. I mean, that's what I think. Who's still against it so militantly? I don't understand it, and why it's not getting legalized state by state en masse now.
Yeah, I've got a friend of mine and she's probably almost 70, and she smokes more than I do. I can guarantee you that much. But like you were saying, this woman and her family are considering moving to Colorado so that he can continue his treatment, so that he can be healthy again. And then it talks about here, this is on the anti-media as well, this article about this family. Once the police took her in, took away the medicine, the kid regressed. He started getting worse in school. His condition started getting worse again. So these people would rather enforce these unjust laws, force people to suffer, and think about what they've done to so many people during this drug war. They've ruined countless lives, countless families. They've broken up so many families, institutionalized so many people because of the drug war. It's still going on today, obviously. Maybe not as bad in some places.
Look what they do in Finland, man. When you get addicted to a drug, they have treatment centers where you can just go and they'll wean you off it. They'll do it professionally. They're not going to judge you. It's something society provides so that we don't have this complete waste of people's lives sitting in a jail because what? They got addicted to something? That makes them so bad? When these guys that are politicians are addicted to power and they're not in jail. So it's just completely hypocritical, and it's not a war on drugs, it's a war on logic. When you live in a place like where you create an enemy and make things out of nothing, when we have all the resources and all the people in the world to have a utopia right here, and it's not happening because we're letting people program us for their own means, well, it's got to end, man. Some generations got to make it end.
Yeah, man. I think we're the ones. We're the ones, but it's going to take some work because these powers are very entrenched. And there's not much. There's not much budging on their end. I mean, it takes an all-out kind of revolting type of attitude in order to get it to change. And now Colorado, apparently, I've been hearing a lot of good things about Colorado. And this is becoming the new center of the new country that the country is evolving into.
It's the test bed for libertarian federalism, which is what I think is going to end up happening, where you have this federal power with a drone network and like we're going to get into, Nick, AI coming online, and there's no way to stop that. The powers that be are going to do what they're going to do, probably whatever, but we got to make sure that we're going to be okay for ourselves and can take care of ourselves on a community level. And that's what Colorado is the test bed for, is libertarianism, allowing people, empowering them to screw up but eventually be able to take care of themselves. Is that feasible in a future where the power elite are going to start taking like a transhuman leap? This is something I've read into, and it kind of makes sense. Why are all these things kind of happening in Colorado? We know Colorado's importance. We know its strategic importance to the people that are in power. Most people do, at least, listening to this. So why are these things happening over there where they're allowing that stuff? They want to see how it goes in their own backyard. Yeah,
and the mayor of Denver is actually an independent. He's not a Republican. He's not a Democrat. And now apparently he's also running, I believe he's running for governor too. So, I mean, yeah, a lot of these ideas are coming on board. A lot of media companies are starting up out there. It's looking pretty good. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just something to think about, I guess. Now, let's get past this whole police state stuff because we all know that's a huge problem. I got some other breaking news here that I want to talk about, and I don't know what to make of it per se. I was hoping to take a few callers on this. If anybody wants to call and chime in on this next topic here, feel free. The number is 718-717-8296. But the Fed announced today that it was going to end their quantitative easing. Now, for people that don't know what quantitative easing is, it was basically where they were creating a bunch of money out of thin air in order to flush the banks full of money so that the banks would lend out a bunch of money so that people could buy a bunch of homes. Now, does that sound like a bad idea because it probably inflated a bubble? Yeah.
Well, what do you think's the real reason? Because I read something that makes total sense. Why they would end QE. There's no need to keep printing money if somebody's going to come in and buy it because it is a corporation. We all know that. And I think I talked to you about this a couple weeks ago, Nick, that there were all these rumors and stuff. They were all unsubstantiated that supposedly they were going to broker a deal because the debt to China was so big that they would buy the Fed. And they would print the money and they would get the interest to pay themselves back from us. So in effect, they'd basically be our moneymaker. But the caveat was that they could back it with 300,000 tons of gold or some insane amount like that. Like it would actually have some liquidity to it. You may have to go do something silly like go to China to get the gold. But I mean, theoretically, at least it would have some kind of tangible backing. Is that good or bad? I mean, obviously we'll take probably a 20% hit on the dollar, but that sounds better than like, I don't know, an 80% hit, which would happen if the dollar died.
Yeah, man, I really don't know what to make of this whole QE3. I mean, the whole ending of the QE and all that stuff. And we got to keep in mind they were printing out roughly $80 billion a month, I think it was.
Last year it was $691 billion, so we got to divide it by 12. But the funniest part about it was I think it was like Belgium was picking up this massive amount of it through their own central bank or something, like the European Fed or something. So they were like lending back. I guess that bailout kicked in over there. So, it's just back and forth. Like they keep lending back and forth. They're like, oh crap, the economy in America is shitty. They'll keep bailing them out and stuff. But like eventually it just doesn't make ends meet. And you got to go to the guy with the most actual tangible assets, which is China, which is unfortunately, that's why they say the theater's shifting to the Pacific.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. That's where all the resources are shifting to. A lot of the businesses, obviously, the population is shifting that way. Um, and I mean, I don't know. America has been a very, very horrible steward of the superpower status. We've done horrible things. We've toppled over 50 governments. We've committed war crimes. I mean, we're sending. I just read this week that we're sending depleted uranium weapons back over to the Iraq area, and we may be using depleted uranium again.
So we're gonna do a smooth. I guess Russia keeps pushing. Well, it'll be some kind of conflict. I doubt it's this huge war, but if we're going to allow China to be the steward simply because that's just the economics of it, and a world war is just not good for anyone. Doesn't matter who you are or what kind of bunker you're in. It's deadly. Everybody's going to suffer. The world will never be the same. So let's avoid that at all costs. Do we shift that over? Do we need to learn Mandarin? I mean, it's the world changing in the adaptation. I mean, 1.3 billion people is a lot of power. I mean, there's just no getting around it. Maybe that's why we're letting in all these immigrants. We have to find some kind of parity. We need more numbers. We need the creativity of immigration. We have declining birth rates otherwise. And China's got 1.3 billion people under a government that they pretty much run. They run the people, man. So how do we compete?
Well, obviously, not with freedom. We're trying to become more and more like China. In fact, I forget who it was, someone I think in the Obama administration was basically saying, oh yeah, we need to take China's internet firewall, their Great Wall of China, the new Wall of China, and use that as an example for what we need to build here in the U.S. So, I mean...
So autocracy is better than freedom? I mean, it's been shown freedom provides... Yeah, so it's hard to keep people under wraps if you've been, pretty much assaulting them and doing bad things to them for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and now they're finding out because of the free flow of information. There's every right to be scared. Stop it. I mean, what are you going to do, an all-out war? It's just insanity, and I hope the new guard of the people at the top, the new generation, just will merge in the mainstream into whatever the plan's going to be, and let there be that kind of freedom, because we're not going to go forward. It's just going to be this constant loop if we get stuck in this fascism again. Everybody never wants to be under it, and we keep fighting it. And it doesn't matter what the tech gets to, there's always going to be a fight against it. It's a pointless exercise we keep going through.
So this kind of brings us to the next topic here, because this QE is going to have some definite consequences. I think it's a good thing that they're ending QE, just because you can't just keep printing money out of thin air, because that always leads to just making the rich people richer. Technically, QE is just a bailout of the rich, more or less, and we've seen the numbers. I mean, in the past, since QE started in 2009, 2010, the rich have just gotten extremely wealthy, and basically everybody else, our wages, even if you make more by the decimal, technically speaking, judging by cost of living expenses and stuff like that, we're making actually less, and that's why China is now more economically sound and more economically powerful than we are, because the pay that their workers get goes further than the pay that our workers get. We're declining quickly, and a lot of it is because of the Federal Reserve, fractional reserve banking, and allowing a private corporation that's owned by the banks, and who knows who the banks are owned by, to control our nation's monetary policy, and by default control our political policy and stuff. Now, we got these midterm elections coming up, and I posted the question today on the anti-media, and I asked who's voting and why. And now I found it interesting that almost everybody, 90%, were like, no, we're not voting. Voting is fucking bullshit. Voting doesn't do anything. It's an illusion. But I want to talk about this upcoming election. What do people think? I mean, should we vote for third party? Should we not vote? I mean, what do you think?
Just vote. I mean, vote whoever the best candidate is that you like. Why not just do that? And who cares what the party is? I mean, I don't know what else you can do. And if there's really nobody available that you like, just leave it blank. I mean, like for governor, probably a good idea because nobody really came to the forefront and even tried to compete. So, I don't know what you do. I think we need to, if anything, we can vote third party or whatever, write in somebody. But why aren't people running? Like, it's only $500 to get going, and you can crowdfund that, no problem. Like what Alex Fidel did, even if he doesn't make it, who cares? He put a lot of issues to the forefront. He gave legitimacy to the issues that otherwise people wouldn't look into. And a lot of people never even heard of a GMO before that guy went to all kinds of meetings and conferences and you name it. And if the agenda is truth, just run under that. Make it the Truth Party. Who cares if that's a platform and you're always spouting out something that the media doesn't want you to know and people are still having to cover these events. Imagine what that would do, because the system it's totally corrupted and it's probably unfixable except to actually infiltrate it with something new.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you're kind of talking about the Ron Paul effect in a way, because I don't think that we're going to fix this system by electing people to the federal government, because the federal government it needs to go. I mean, it's completely corrupted. It's completely horrible. I'd more likely rather see Congress burn to the ground than see my candidate make it into Congress. But I think you're right is in the way that we can use political platforms as a vehicle of truth, more or less. And I think that is also kind of what Alex is doing. And it was great when I went to his debate up in Encinitas that one of the first questions asked about the militarization of the police, and to hear that question be asked, and knowing that nearly everyone in the crowd, even though it was an older crowd, it's very progressive. A lot of those people are against the militarization of the police. And to see every one of those candidates sit there and be put on the spot and have to say, oh, yeah, I think it's a horrible idea. We shouldn't be militarizing the police, except for the one guy at the end, which Alex ended up accusing him of treason. But the guy at the end was like a reserve sheriff, and he thought it was a great idea to militarize the police and all that stuff. And then he walked out. He left early because he knew he was going to get shredded apart. But I agree with you. I think it is a vehicle for information and a vehicle for truth. I don't think that elections actually accomplish much when it comes to the federal level. I think at the local level, I think it's much more possible to influence things on the local level and at least get your city or your county to get people that are actually more aligned with your ideals. In order to get a person elected to Congress or to the Senate or to the presidential level, you got to have a bunch of corporate backing. And in order to get corporate backing, you have to tote the party line or tote the corporate line, and that's just a matter of life in the current American political system. So if it weren't that way, I would probably be all for voting if it weren't for that fact. But right now, it's not that way. It's the guy with the most money gets the most ad time on TV. Gets all the interviews with the corporate media, because the corporate media is completely signed on to this two-party dog and pony show.
And it's shadow funding, and you don't know what the heck's going on or what the agenda is, except that, generally speaking, less people are going to make it year after year, and those that do make it are going to get richer and richer and less likely to go against the system, and you're just going to have this overwhelming rich class and a bunch of poor. They want to take away the middle class. They think it's an aberration. They don't ever call into account that by having a middle class, you give people not only reason to work hard, but then they have ability to, set that down to their children. And now that's not really happening. Like, that working middle class is kind of like eroding. And look, our infrastructure is eroding. We're declining in all the important things in the world, and stuff's getting worse and worse. Well, why? It's because people don't have any security or sense of ability to make things better, and then their children are going to have a worse gig after that. We got to reverse it somehow.
We got to, if we're going to go back to a honest electoral system, we got to work with something like Morgan Rocco was talking about with us a few weeks ago with the BIT Congress, transparent voting systems that can't be rigged, that are completely transparent. We got to get money out of politics, obviously. We got to have avenues of information that aren't corporate interests, and that's one thing I like about the Free and Equal organization that I help out with social media, freeandequal.org. They're building this thing called the Election Assistant, which is basically a nonpartisan, neutral information gathering platform for politicians, so that you can actually go and you're not basing your vote on the bullshit you see on TV, where it's just a bunch of attack ads. And then they talk shit about a guy for 2 minutes, and then they show a bright, shining picture of this other guy with this messiah complex. It's like, well, you got to vote for this guy because he's going to do this. Well, the only reason this guy can afford to put an ad on TV is because he's getting $1 million from some kind of corporate lobby. So any candidate that you see with ads on TV is probably not anyone that you want to be voting for anyway. But, I mean, there's all kinds of ways of fixing it. Making new avenues that become mainstream, that where people actually get reliable information about candidates, their voting history, the things that they've claimed that they were going to do, the way that they voted, how they've contradicted, how they've flip-flopped, how they've lied, and stuff like that. I mean, that's what we need to have in order to have an honest electoral system. But in the current state of affairs, that's, it's not here right now. It's not going to happen. That's why this election coming up, 2014, it's going to be another dog and pony show. Yeah, I think considering that there is a big independent, a big amount of people that are independent now, I think we are going to see maybe 3 or 4 congressional candidates that are elected independent. Maybe Colorado's governor will be independent. And, we'll see maybe a few mayors like Alex get elected and stuff like that, and that's good. And that's the first step in the process. But, we got a very, very broken system that needs to be fixed.
People like you and me got to mobilize and kind of get another party going and get it funded independently. There's people that'll chip in $5 or $10, and they'll do it willingly instead of having to go out begging like the two parties have to, because the only big people they can get are corporate donors. Nobody's giving $5 and $10 to these two big parties anymore because we realize they're just hopeless. So it's that, or what's going to happen when nobody has a voice anymore, inevitably will be a revolt. And it's just we can kind of circumvent it, get around it if possible. If not, it'll be what it is. So, I hope it doesn't get to that point. It could, but what I'm saying is if there were 500 Alex Fidels across the country, all these new ideas would pop up overnight, and then by 2016, imagine the tide. The tide just coming in with all this stuff that people just didn't want out, and now it's out. And what are you going to do? Silence everyone? Buy off everyone? It's impossible. And that's what we need, man. We need the tide to turn.
Yeah, exactly, man. I think I'm kind of optimistic for the future. I am pessimistic for this election, but I'm optimistic that in the future it'll get better and better.
Well, it'll be the widely covered social media election, which shows with conclusive results that no matter what, nothing changes unless we have to change it. We have to go change it. That's all we could do.
Yeah, and we got to vote for ourselves, and vote with our dollars too, because that's probably the biggest thing we can do. And that's what I wanted to quickly mention before we go on to this AI stuff. About Monday's show, I wanted to make sure you guys go and check that out. You could also find it on YouTube, or you can find it on the show archives on the left-hand side of the screen there where you're listening. Or you can go on UCY.TV's YouTube channel and go back to Monday's show, which was on the 27th. But we had a great caller in from the Common Ground movement, and he's talking about launching a huge American tax strike. And we're talking about getting like 50 million people, 20 million people on board and launching a massive tax strike, and to send a message and to start defunding some of this crap that we don't agree with. And I know there's people from all over the spectrum, liberal progressives that want to defund the war machine, people on the right side of things that want to close down the IRS. I think this is an idea that people can get behind, and this would be the ultimate voting. A tax strike would be the biggest show of protest voting that we've seen. We haven't seen a big tax strike movement in the U.S. in a very, very long time. And now, of course, it's going to be met with fear-mongering. It'll be met with brute force, just like the Whiskey Rebellion was met, 5 years after this country was founded. But it's something that could really take effect, because now think about this. If we did a tax strike, now if we think about all the ways the government funds itself, right? Now, the government collects a bunch of taxes, but considering that we run a deficit, we run a bunch of debt, the government does not collect enough taxes to fund all the crap that it's spending, right? So they've got to get all this funding from foreign countries, bond buyers, and the Fed printing money out of thin air, loaning it to the banks loan it to the government pays it back based on your future expected tax revenues and stuff like that. If we were able to get this thing going, and then the future tax revenues of the United States started to get called into question, guess what? All these foreign countries would stop funneling money to our government. And we would create more waves than we'd ever be able to create by voting. And I think that's a great idea. If you guys want to know more about it, go back and check out Monday's show. Now, let's jump into this AI stuff, because this is making some waves online, and I know a lot of people are all for it, a lot of people are against it. But apparently Google's new computer that they're building, they acquired this company that's building a human-like computer that has the ability to learn and eventually will be able to program itself. Now, I have an excerpt here from betabeat.com. The computer is currently being developed by the London-based DeepMind Technologies, an artificial intelligence firm that was acquired by Google earlier this year. Neural networks, which will enable the computer to invent programs for situations that it has not seen before, will make up half of the computer's architecture. Experts at the firm hope this will equip the machine with the means to create human-like, but still with the number-crunching power of a computer. So, this is one of the next big steps in what people like to call singularity, artificial intelligence, the blending of computer with biological systems. And let's face it, we already are on that path with, all of us, almost everybody's got a smartphone. People got those Bluetooth devices. People got Google Glass and all this stuff. I mean, so we're already combining a lot of technological stuff with the biological field. I mean, when humans first start coming around, even chimpanzees and stuff use tools and stuff. So in a way, that's combining technology with the biological thing. But we're talking about a whole new level where these machines, these computers, are able to actually pretty much think and do things on their own autonomously. And so, I mean, the future can be very bright with this technology, or it can be very dark, and it really depends on which path we go.
Like always, the scientists that developed it are going to have to be responsible for what happens to the future, and I just hope they programmed some kind of ethical code in the back door or something. I mean, what we're going to get to, or best case scenario, we're going to have individually DNA encoded brain chips that we control. But the only way you'd really know is if you were some kind of programming genius. You're going to have to trust that whoever programs these things is not going to give them a backdoor where they can control you, literally, through electronic impulses. Now, are you going to have this installed in you? Nope. Will you be at a massive disadvantage against those that do? Oh, yeah. Imagine if you don't have a smartphone now. It's inconvenient. Imagine if you don't have a smart chip in your brain and people talk to you and you would naturally just find things out, and now you can't, and now you're just like that low information person. It's going to just kill the competitiveness of those without it. And it's just going to be a way where, those who are informed and know what to look for and know what code is and know how to read what's in their own chip and look at it before they get it surgically installed will, be that much better off than the people that have to trust the people making it.
Yeah, man. And now the other thing we got to worry about now, besides on the personal level, is the whole Skynet threat and things that can happen with that. And we talked about this for a few shows now. When I realized it, how a lot of people in the Middle East, I mean, let's talk about Yemen, Pakistan, Afghanistan, places like that. These people are already under a Terminator type of culture, right? They're already being blown up by drones that are autonomous. The story broke a while back. I've known about it for a while because a friend of mine that's in the Army told me about it. But a lot of these drones that are flying in the Middle East now are they're not operated by humans. They're run by computers. They're based on algorithms. They have cameras that fly out. Their cameras find heat signatures, put the heat signatures into an algorithm. They see it enough times. They say, okay, that's a terrorist. They drop the bomb. That's the thing we got to be worried about, is this AI takeover of dangerous weapons that could kill people, and the implications that carries. I mean, obviously, Terminator movie is fiction, but it could become more real and more real as time goes on. Something we got to be aware with and try to prevent. Otherwise, who knows? Thanks for tuning in. Catch you guys Friday.
Yo, here we go through the stereo.